Previously on The Last Dragon Riders. In our once peaceful village, dragons soared again, reviving an ancient bond between human and dragonkind. Our journey led us to forgotten caves, cradling the last echoes of dragon eggs, thought lost to time. But tranquility was shattered when brutal raiders besieged us, forcing us to defend our home with fire and steel. Amara and I, alongside our dragons, fought valiantly, pushing back the relentless tide of enemies. Seeking strength, we turned to Aldan, my mentor, unaware of the shadows cast by his true intentions. In the Witch's Wood, under Cirilana's ancient wisdom, we honed our magic, preparing for the battles ahead. But upon our return, the heart-wrenching sight of our village in ruins awaited us. The mastermind of this devastation was Aldan, once my trusted guide, now a tyrant commanding dark forces. With our world crumbling, Amara and I confronted Aldan, only to be met with overwhelming power and a crushing defeat. As we face our darkest hour, the fate of dragonkind hangs in the balance. The struggle continues in The Last Dragon Riders. Dragon War. Morale soared within me as our ragged band took flight, the great witch Cirilana now joining our crusade. Though we had suffered crushing defeat, her presence reignited our hopes of victory against Aldan and his enslaved dragons. Cirilana rode magnificently atop her golden dragon Liana, determination etched on her timeless features. With an ancient power on our side, perhaps we could still recover from the darkness encircling us. We flew swiftly, the landscape blurring beneath our dragon's beating wings. The brave comrades buoyed my spirit, but an anxious dread still clawed at my heart. What new nightmares awaited us back in our ravaged home? How much more devastation had Aldan wrought in our absence? Before long we soared over the misty peaks, the final barriers between us and the smoking ruins Aldan left behind. I steeled myself for the horrors likely awaiting us below. Morale soared within me as our ragged band took flight, the great witch Cirilana now joining our crusade. Though we had suffered crushing defeat, her presence reignited our hopes of victory against Aldan and his enslaved dragons.
Valkyrie, are you sure you're ready to see what awaits? Our home.
I know, Amara, but we must be strong now for all who fell. Stay close. We face this together. She nodded, jaw clenched with quiet rage. We dove from the clouds, our dragons' piercing cries heralding our advance. The end would soon be upon us, for good or ill. Cirilana raised her staff, arcane power already gathering around her. She nodded firmly to me. Though centuries old, determination burned fiercely in the witch's eyes. Today we make our stand, Cirilana. With your ancient arts, we shall cleanse this land of Aldan's vile influence once and for all.
Yes, Valkyries, stand fast. Evil cannot endure where righteousness burns bright.
The smouldering remains of our village came into view through the haze. Squadrons of dragons circled above like vultures as Aldan hovered arrogantly at their center atop his personal beast. Our ragtag force was but a speck against their legions, but we would fight with righteous fury nonetheless. Rangers, with me, for our families, for our home. I raised my sword skyward, a rallying cry erupting from my chest. Our allies echoed my defiant shout, morale and defiance overpowering our dread. The rays of dawn gleamed boldly on our blades as we plunged into the chaos below. The battle was upon us. Our ragged band dove into the swarming legions ahead, my heart pounding as we braced for first contact. Righteous fury flowed through me as I raised my sword, ready to cleave through our cruel foes. But as the dark mass of dragons and beasts closed in, a blinding flash erupted from Cirilana's outstretched hand. The light seared outward, washing over the entirety of Aldan's forces. Dragons faltered in midair, shuddering and shrieking as the magic took hold. Press the attack! We crashed into their disoriented ranks, swords swinging and spells blazing. My blade carved through one nightmare creature after another in a dance of vengeance. Amara called down bolts of arcane fire from above, scorching dozens of beasts at a time. For those first brutal moments, it felt as if sweet victory could be at hand. But after the initial shock, the endless hordes began to rally. For each foe I cut down, 3 more took its place. We were being swallowed by the swarm. I searched desperately for Cirillana, hoping her ancient powers could turn the tide once more. There, atop a nearby peak wreathed in crackling lightning, stood the witch, arms raised to the heavens. The air hummed with power as she summoned the fury of the storm. Jagged bolts tore through Aldan's forces, while icy winds battered them from above.
Valkyrie! We must press on before her strength fails. Now is our chance.
I rallied our dragon riders, carving a path toward Aldan's inner guard. We moved as one, an unstoppable force driving deeper into the dark heart of his army. But our foes had recovered and hit back with dark magics of their own. Ominous shadow beasts tore free of the earth, encircling us with gnashing teeth and claws. Amara and I stood back to back, fending off the nightmarish horde closing in. Hope was fading fast. Then a titanic roar shook the battlefield. Cirillana, wreathed in light, soared toward us. Astride her golden dragon, Liana, with a slash of the witch's staff, the shadow beasts recoiled into the earth once more. Our allies let out a cheer, regrouping for another push. But high above, Aldan only laughed, the sound sending chills down my spine. He rose up on his dark dragon, eyes blazing.
Is this the best you can muster, Cirillana? I expected more after all these years.
With a snap of his fingers, colossal meteors wreathed in flame emerged from the clouds, crashing devastatingly into our ranks. Another wave of his hand raised towering walls of ice to block our advance. The battlefield descended into utter chaos. Cirillana strained to counter Aldan's magics, but they kept coming in endless waves. Step by hard-won step, our advance faltered, then reversed. The Dark Master's power seemed to have no limits. As Cirillana's magic waned, Aldan's forces surged forward with renewed fury. We were being driven back. Just as Aldan's forces threatened to overwhelm us, the Dark Master raised his arms, foul magic swirling around him. The earth trembled, then exploded outward in a blast of dirt and stone. Giant serpents and vicious harpies emerged from the rubble, venom dripping from their fangs.
Valkyrie! Look to the woods. More beasts approach.
I followed her gaze. The trees shook violently as stampeding wildlife charged onto the battlefield, corrupted by Aldan's magic. We were being attacked from all sides now. Hold fast, Amara. We fight them together. Back to back, Amara and I slashed and parried, fending off snapping jaws and swiping talons. To my left, a giant serpent reared up to strike, only to be engulfed in dragonfire from Silas swooping overhead. The extra beasts had bolstered Aldan's forces once more. We were battling furiously but losing ground. Then I spotted Cirillana high above, conjuring a whirlwind of ice and snow. Amara, with me! Amara nodded. Together we carved through the seething ranks, blasting away snarling beasts. Cirillana saw her opening and drove the freezing winds downward. Ice spread rapidly, encasing droves of creatures in glittering tombs. But Aldan only sneered, summoning molten boulders from the burning skies. The battlefield descended into searing chaos once more. Through it all, the Dark Master's power seemed endless. Step by hard-won step, our ragged alliance was being driven back yet again. Just as defeat threatened to swallow us, a shimmering dome of light enveloped our forces. Cirillana stood atop a nearby rise, eyes closed in deep concentration as she strained to maintain the protective barrier. The witch's magic shielded us from the flames raining down from above, though we could see dark forms moving just beyond the light. Aldan's beasts slammed against the exterior of the dome, seeking any weakness.
Her magic can't hold forever against such an onslaught.
She was right. Already cracks were spreading through Cyrillana's sanctuary as she sank to one knee under the immense pressure. Suddenly, the earth heaved and trembled. Massive rock trolls burst forth, pounding relentlessly against the dome. Cyrillana cried out at the limit of her strength. Then, with a thunderous smash, the barrier shattered. We were exposed once more to the endless hordes under Aldan's command. Cyrillana had exhausted herself protecting us. To arms! For our people! Amara and I stood together against the onrushing beasts. She blasted them back with lances of fire while Silas tore into their ranks with claws and flames. I slashed and parried tirelessly even as weariness seeped into my bones. But for every foe that fell, 2 more emerged from the shadows. Aldan sneered down from above, an endless well of dark power. Cyrillana had saved us from annihilation, but our situation remained dire. Much of Aldan's dragon army still served him, and now even more nightmares had joined the fray. As a massive troll bore down on me, I knew we were being swallowed by the dark. Cyrillana had given all she could. Now only one option remained to turn the tide. As the tide turned against us, I searched the chaos for Cyrillana, hoping the witch could call on some last reserve of strength. But she was nowhere to be seen. Then a shadow fell over me. I looked up to see Cyrillana descending rapidly astride Liana, her face grim. She spoke urgently as they landed beside me.
Valkyrie, hear me. I have one final option, but it will require everything I have left.
Anything, my friend. Just tell us what to do. Cyrillana placed a hand tenderly on Liana's neck, sadness in her eyes.
I must take on my true dragon form once more, but it will likely be the last time. When in dragon form, my ancient spirit ages rapidly. My witch body has kept me from diminishing all these centuries.
Liana let out a mournful cry as she realized what Cyrillana meant. My heart dropped. The transformation could very well destroy her. Cyrillana turned to Liana, both with tears glistening in their eyes. She held the golden dragon's head close.
Be strong, my child. Know that I have cherished our time together.
Liana nuzzled her mother softly. Though no words were exchanged, their bond spoke volumes in the moment. Cyrillana then turned to me, resolve stealing her features once more. With a heavy heart, I nodded, stepping back to give her space. The fate of us all now rested on the witch's sacrifice. She raised her staff skyward, power building like a gathering storm. As Cyrillana's magic cascaded over the battlefield, the very air seemed to vibrate with ancient power. Her eyes glowed white-hot, body wreathed in blinding flames. Then, with an earth-shattering roar that resonated in my bones, the flames erupted skyward, transforming into an utterly titanic dragon. Liana reared back in awe, wings buffeting us with wind. Where the frail witch had stood now loomed a dragon the size of a mountain, gleaming gold against the clouds. Cyrillana's draconic form radiated raw magical energy, ancient scales shimmering in the sunlight. My allies stared open-mouthed at the primordial behemoth. With a single flap of her wings, gale force winds scattered entire squads of Aldan's forces. She rose higher, gathering power. Seeing our opening, I raised my sword high, crying out, "Now allies for Cyrillana, for dragons!" My voice shook the heavens. As one, we drove toward Aldan's inner guard, fighting with renewed vigor in Cyrillana's shadow. The Dark Master could only stare, stunned by her colossal manifestation. With earth-shattering fury, Cyrillana unleashed hellish flames upon the massed ranks of our foes. Entire divisions were reduced to smouldering ash in seconds beneath the nuclear fire.
Behold, the First Mother rides again.
In mere moments, Cyrillana had utterly decimated whole sections of Aldan's grand army. I grinned fiercely, sensing the battle shifting. But the the Dark Master soon recovered from his shock, an ominous glint in his eyes. Though Cirillana had turned the tide, Aldan was far from finished. He raised his arms, rallying his enslaved dragons to converge on the titanic gold dragon. Squadrons of dragons swarmed Cirillana, unleashing torrents of flame and clawing at her massive frame. She swung her spiked tail, sending dozens flying, but more took their place.
Valkyrie! Cirillana is gravely outnumbered. We must help her.
To the skies! Divert Aldan's forces away from the First Mother. We took flight atop our dragons, speeding into the aerial melee surrounding Cirillana. I slashed and blasted the enthralled beasts, trying to draw their fury. Amara guarded Cirillana's flanks, picking off attackers one by one with precise fire. But Aldan himself swooped in, blasting Cirillana directly with dark energy. She reared in pain as his magic visibly drained her strength. Lyanna dove to defend her mother, but Aldan swatted her aside with a sinister spell. Cirillana's breaths came heavy as the endless dragons gradually overwhelmed her. Cirillana, you must break Aldan's hold on them. The First Mother nodded weakly, eyes beginning to glow. The tide of the skies was turning against us once more. Though Cirillana fought valiantly, she was being overwhelmed by the endless curse of dragons under Aldan's command. Lyanna and I struck at his forces to give the First Mother respite, but the Dark Master himself pressed the attack. Cirillana, you must shatter the source of his control. The First Mother nodded weakly, dodging Aldan's black magics by a narrow margin. She eyed the blood-red amulet around his neck, the nexus of his power over dragonkind. With a defiant roar, Cirillana reared up and blasted toward Aldan on smoking wings. They grappled ferociously amidst the clouds, claw and fang, rending scale and flesh. Cirillana sought desperately to grasp the amulet in her jaws, but Aldan kept it tantalizingly out of reach. He blasted her relentlessly with dark flames, maniacal laughter booming over the battlefield.
Valkyrie! We must aid Cirillana while she battles Aldan.
You speak true. Into the fray, quickly! We dove into the melee surrounding the dueling titans. Back to back, Amara and I slashed and blasted away scores of Aldan's enthralled beasts. The mindless dragons came at us in waves, ruthless claws eager to tear us apart. Cirillana and Aldan traded earth-shaking blows that boiled the very air. The First Mother was weary, her golden scales running red with blood. But bit by bit, she was turning the duel in her favor. With a thunderous flap, Cirillana blew back a squadron harrying her flanks. In that moment, she saw her opportunity. Razor-sharp fangs flashed as she lunged. Aldan's agonized scream cracked the heavens as the amulet shattered in Cirillana's jaws. A pulse erupted, washing over all dragons present. Scaled heads shook, crimson fading from their eyes. Aldan's control was broken. Amara cheered triumphantly at the sight. But Aldan was not yet defeated. With a guttural roar, he charged Cirillana, clawed hands wreathed in malevolent magic. Lyanna and I moved to intercept, but we were too distant. In a blinding flash, Cirillana reverted to her frail witch form before us. The strain had been too much for her ancient body to maintain. Aldan closed in for the kill, ready to end the First Mother.
You brought this upon yourself.
But at the final moment, Lyanna dove into his path. With a sickening crunch of bone, the golden dragon clamped her jaws around Aldan. Aldan's broken body went limp in Lyanna's mouth. At long last, his evil had been extinguished from this world. An exhausted cheer went up amongst our allies. We had won the day, but at grave cost. I rushed to where Cirillana lay collapsed upon the scorched earth. The witch drew ragged breaths, her wrinkled face ashen. Weakly, she grasped my hand.
Valkyrie, you have done so well, my child. Lead them justly. Guide them into the light.
Her hand went slack. Thank you, Great Mother. The First Mother's spirit had passed from this world. Amara wept bitterly beside me. Though we had triumphed, joy was absent from any heart. Cirilana's sacrifice had enabled victory, but the devastation would take lifetimes to fully heal. Her wisdom and kindness were irreplaceable. But now the future rested on our shoulders. We would rebuild what was lost, shaping society with mercy and justice, rather than fear and tyranny. It is what Cirilana gave everything for. Her dream of peace would be made real, even if she could not witness it. Wiping my tears, I gazed upward, knowing Cirilana's spirit soared with the noble dragons once more. Thank you, First Mother. Your courage will inspire generations to come. And so ended the Second Dragon War. Though evil rises anew in every age, there will also always be those willing to give everything to guide the world back toward the light.